In a bid to completely eliminate the negative impact of the total removal of fuel subsidy by mid-2022, the Nigerian government is pledging to pay 5,000 naira monthly to 30 to 40 million poor citizens for transportation. Ehosa Egumbo reports.
Finance and National Planning Minister Zainab Ahmed, at the launch of the World Bank's Nigeria Development Update Report, says the payment of 5,000 naira monthly to over 40 million poor Nigerians for transportation is being designed to safeguard poor and middle-class households after the full removal of fuel subsidies next year.
We are working with partners on measures to cushion potential negative impact of the removal of the subsidies on the most vulnerable at the bottom of the pyramid, at least 40% of the population. One of such measures will be to institute a monthly transport subsidy in the form of cash transfer of 5,000 naira to between 30 to 40 million deserving Nigerians. And this we're aiming to do using digital platforms, that there will be no physical cash transfers in this instance.
What you're dealing with is about 243 billion naira of fuel subsidies every month. Anyone can take his telephone and compute this. 60 million liters times 135 naira times 30 days. It will give you 243 billion. So there's no magic around this. You can avoid it. There is, Madam is here, Sarah is here. She said you can be transparent, but don't be naked. But I think this is a good time to be naked. Because this is the reality that we are facing on. Going forward into 2022, just as the Honourable Minister has indicated, we simply can't afford it anymore.
Ahmed says the government is hopeful that the new Petroleum Industry Act, the completion and coming on stream of 3 private refineries under construction in 2022, among others, will boost the nation's economy.
So this report for us is another wake-up call. It's like shaking everybody out of maybe the stupor that we're in to galvanize the whole of the community, so that is government, including citizens, to take that bold, decisive action. Those actions that need to be taken, they are painful, they're not going to be popular, but actions that need to be taken so that we can make progress.
Other than fully removing fuel subsidy, the World Bank is prescribing more tough economic policies that must be undertaken by Nigeria if it hopes to fix its revenue problems.
The business unusual scenario is one where we take action regardless of what happens with the oil price, and this is significantly going to boost our per capita income levels by growing at higher rates that we have seen over the past 5 to 6 years. But the opportunity cost of not taking a business unusual approach could be an additional 6 million Nigerians falling into poverty just between 2022 and 2024.
The status quo is unsustainable, and the question is, the solution, finding a solution that is, works for everyone, I think requires everyone to participate in that conversation, and it has to be a Nigerian conversation, and certainly it has to go beyond economics.
The World Bank report shows that 8 million Nigerians fell into poverty in less than 2 years as a result of inflation shocks. To reduce the shocks and create more jobs, the bank is advising Nigeria to build a digital economy by scaling up its public platforms, digital financial services, and providing digital infrastructure to tap into its teeming youthful population. Ehosa Egumbo, Arise News.
All right, beautiful report there by Ehosa Egumbo. Tundu, your take on this?
Well, that thorny issue of the fuel subsidy, finally it looks like it's going to be addressed. You'll recall, well, you definitely recall, the previous administration did make that attempt, but it was resisted by some of the people who today are in support, because I think finally we're all on the same page. According to the World Bank, Nigeria is the only country in the world that operates this universal fuel subsidy. So that should tell you a thing or two about how completely unfeasible it is. And I guess the federal government, in keeping with their sort of socialist slant, is always very concerned about the poorest of the poor, as they call it, and have proposed this idea of 5,000 naira a month for their transport. But I'm not entirely convinced, because That whole poorest of the poor and giving them money is not a novel idea in this administration. This is the administration that created an entire ministry for humanitarian services. And that ministry has been giving conditional cash transfers. And there have been questions about transparency, questions about accountability. And those questions will be raised in this context as well, I'm afraid. And there's also the fact that, yes, what we're generally told about fuel subsidy is that it's costing us 250 billion naira a month, and that by next year, most states will not be able to pay salaries. It's going to be a disaster. But if you do the math with this 5,000 naira transport, allowance or whatever we want to call it, to 40 million people, 40 million of the most vulnerable people, that works out to about 200 million naira a month. So what are we really saving? Where's that money coming from? I do think there needs to be a lot more clarity than has been given so far.
Well, the position of the World Bank has been very consistent in saying that the fuel subsidy regime in Nigeria is unsustainable, and in many ways it is unexplainable. And before the Buhari administration, other governments had tried to toe the same line. You will recall that, in fact, there were riots under the President Jonathan administration over the issue of removal of subsidy, because the government at the time said, look, this will not work if we continue at this rate, because what is being subsidized is inefficiency. What was being subsidized was opaqueness within the oil and gas industry. And at that time, government set up two different committees led by Aigboje Imokwede at the time. But of course, you remember the 2012 riots and all of that. But even in spite of that, the government had set up at the time something similar to address the fears of the people, which was the Sure P, as it was known then. And there were issues with it, leading to a situation whereby Dr. Christopher Collady, who was chairman of the Sure P, at some point had to withdraw and said, look, he didn't understand how the process was being managed. Well, the Buhari administration got lucky a bit and increased the pump price of fuel. But the main argument is about the complete removal of subsidy, so that we do not have people who are collecting rent from the Nigerian state and funding inefficiency, or that phenomenon called under recovery, which is also a euphemism, for subsidy. Now, the Nigerian government this time around, under the National Development Plan, had already said by June it will remove the subsidy. But the World Bank came forward and said, no, it has to go within the first quarter. Otherwise, the country will be in big trouble. Zainab Ahmed was speaking yesterday at the World Bank World Bank Nigeria Development Update. And then, of course, she still insisted on that June date that Nigeria had said, but also said, well, if it were possible, in line with the Petroleum Industry Act, before June, government will have taken the step to remove the subsidy. And it was in that context that she started talking about this 5,000 naira per month for the most vulnerable in society. Now, the problem with that is this, and we had that issue during the palliatives for COVID-19. Many Nigerians did not agree with the content of the National Social Register. We were told that a certain CBT mechanism was used to compile that register. Now, the main concern at that time was that it was skewed in favor of a certain part of the country. Two, some people said they could not trace these poorest Nigerians as identified, 30 million. At some point, we expect that maybe the register will have gone up maybe up to 40 million. Now, 7 million households were mentioned, and that in these 7 million households, you even have more people benefiting from this conditional cash transfer. Many Nigerians also queried that. We had the National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office manager on this program, or maybe on This Day Live, at that time. Now, have we addressed all of that? Because there will be first the question of trust. There will be the question again, too, 5,000 naira. What is the equivalent of 5,000 naira to the dollar? Who would that 5,000 naira help? I mean, how much can you fetch with, can you get with 5,000 naira into this economy? The Minister of Finance, however, also drew attention to a number of things. He was talking about, well, you know, a lot of optimism, how we will be helped if the 4 refineries start working and they come on stream. Well, will the 4 Nigerian-owned refineries be ready by June next year? That's the question. 2, she talked about 3 private refineries also coming on stream. Would that happen? So these are some of the questions out there. It looks like, well, government is acting on the basis of optimism, but there must be something more concrete. But in principle, there is a general agreement about how this economy can no longer continue to sustain inefficiency. And I think more thought should be given to the social dimension of it. We had the N-Power. We had what they call GEP. You know, what are those other additional things that can be done? And what efforts have we made so far to address the challenges we saw in the past? Who is the poor in Nigeria? Can we put a face to that poor person? And do we have the data, the structure in place to be able to operationalize this? Otherwise, the people who just suffer at the end of the day will be the hapless people, you know, in whose name some of these steps are taken, but at the end of the day, they don't get to benefit.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Bati Antunda this morning. Trust, that word comes up again. Trust, trust, trust. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Rotus, we'll have Michael, we'll have Adesua Amorwa to give us updates on Africa business, Africa global business and COVID-19 activities across the globe. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Over to you, Rotus. Good morning.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. Well, we kick off with the decision, MPC, Monetary Policy Committee. They decided, as was expected by almost everyone, to hold rates in place. So 11.5% benchmark rate, 27.5 cash reserve ratio, 30% liquidity ratio. As has been said, if you we covered the speech, the post MPC speech and interview. Press conference with the central bank governor yesterday, talking about having, maintaining an accommodative stance and so on. Also, as far as disbursements, the central bank reeled off, billions in, intervention in different parts of the economy that have been they've been putting forward. 41 billion naira for a wheat program to try to wean ourselves off imports at least by about 35% in the new year. 5.8 billion naira to 6 large-scale projects under the commercial agri credit program. 864 billion total to 4.1 million farmers cultivating about 5.2 million hectares of land. 261 billion as part of the manufacturing intervention program, another 5 billion to healthcare, about 108 billion to hospitals and pharmaceuticals. So again, when you think about GDP growth and the gradual resuscitation of the economy, if you will, central bank has played quite an outsized role in assistance to various sectors of the economy. And Gordon Emefiele said that a support is going to continue as much as it's needed. To the World Bank released a Nigerian development updates, the second reports on the nation. The title is, not business as usual. They're saying that there's a lot of urgency required with Nigeria to put forward reforms. On the Arise Exchange, which our viewers can catch at 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, West African time, I spoke with the World Bank Country Director, Shobham Chuduri, and also their lead economist, Marco Hernandez. And we talked extensively about, especially fuel subsidies. They really, the World Bank has been hammering on fuel subsidies and how they need to be removed. They're saying now that salaries won't be able to be paid in 2022 if fuel subsidies continue because of the fact that it continues to increase as you've seen oil prices rise. Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Finance, I heard Doctor talking about this a few minutes ago. They've said that they are considering a 5,000 naira transport allowance. So, and we kind of talked about this on the show where we said that we should take the savings from the subsidy and put it elsewhere. So I guess it's good to hear the government at least say that they want to do this. But as I heard Doctor talking about a few minutes ago, how do you determine who's the poorest and so on and so forth? But look, the subsidy needs to end, and of the three of you, I've talked about this. You brought it up with the president when you had your exclusive chat with him, and so we will see exactly how far this goes in terms of how serious the government is in removing subsidies. To the corporate sector, the Eco Bank has come out to say that the deal involving flour mills of Nigeria taking over Honeywell flour mills shouldn't go through because they're saying that Honeywell Flour Mills is heavily indebted to EcoBank. EcoBank, of course, a Pan-African bank, large footprint across the African continent. They're saying they extended a number of facilities to Honeywell Flour Mills, and those facilities are not performing any further. So they've actually taken this matter to court, and they said they are seeking for assets that are being collateralized by the facilities to be wound down. So they're saying that this deal shouldn't go forward and the matter is in court. So that's throwing a wrench in this plans for Honeywell Flour Mills to sell off that 71.6% stake to Flour Mills of Nigeria. Also to Kenya, Kenya's mango exports should soon resume to the European Union. Check out this foresight from Kenya. Kenya imposed a self-imposed ban in 2013 on mango exports to the European Union because of a prevalence of fruit flies. So they did that. They banned themselves. They stopped the exports in order to not they preemptively banned themselves so that the EU wouldn't ban the exports, which will now take longer for it to be removed after they've met certain parameters. So they're talking about, hot water treatments. They're talking about being able to, they've controlled zones where the mangoes are grown, where the flies are prevalent. And now they've had talks with Brussels and so on. So now those exports to the EU should continue. I think this year they only did about 493 million shillings worth of exports of mangoes. That comes to about $5 million or so. They've had to export to the Middle East, but get this, they've had competition from Egypt in terms of exports of mangoes to the Middle East. So they want to, quickly go back to the European Union because it's such a large market. So, when you talk about export diversification and revenues and so on, Kenya, their horticulture sector is healthy. In flowers alone, they did about $1.1 billion in a COVID year. To M-Pesa is upgrading its platform in order to allow advertising. So if you think about other e-commerce, if you think about what Amazon does and other platforms, being able to allow businesses to advertise, M-Pesa wants to go beyond payments services and payment facilitation. They want to allow businesses to advertise on their platform. It's going to be another revenue generator for the company. That's our update.
I mean, Safaricom keeps pushing the boundary of M-Pesa and what it can do. And that's what you get when you have an aggregate of businesses. There's a large market. A lot of people use M-Pesa in Kenya. I mean, there's this joke that goes around in Kenya that you can even pay a police officer a bribe in Kenya with M-Pesa. It's just unparalleled the things you can do. And now they're also creating that space for businesses to be able to advertise and do some level of B2B advertising to other businesses. I mean, that's the greatness the platform gives. And concerning the mango story in Kenya, it just shows that we need to look at other areas, to export more out of this country. I don't know why we're not doing mango. I keep looking at oranges, for instance, and the UK. There's a huge shortfall of oranges. And Nigeria is one of the second largest producer of onion, correct me if I'm wrong. The UK still imports a lot of onion from Holland. Those are markets we can put our onion into. We have many, many markets, We can also get our export fit for purpose even to the American market. We have AGOA there, Africa Growth and Opportunities Acts. But when you look at the quota of AGOA, what we use to carry is mostly crude oil. So these are places we need to look at and think out of the box. And I feel with the right incentive, there's a whole lot that can be done. The CBN, yes, putting things at bay. When you saw the meeting, extensive meeting, MPC meeting yesterday, I mean, we're all expecting that. This is just the things to be able to stabilize things as regards the economy now. But another part, they talked about that we didn't highlight is the forbearance issue. The fact that they're saying the economy is already opening up around the world. So people that owe them loans should start paying those loans now. I know, they've had to extend the tenure on the moratorium a couple of times, but now they're saying, yeah, start paying back the loans. Businesses are starting to open up. So let's see how people start to pay back those loans, because there were a lot of intervention post-COVID to be able to aid businesses, and they got these loans as a very good knockdown rate, pretty much, as you will get, as unlike you will get in the commercial, banking sector. So people should start paying back those loans so that people too can have the money to do even more. But even Stevens, good stuff. We're stabilizing. Hopefully, as time goes on, those inflation numbers come down more year on year, and we start to see more growth, that eclipses population growth. We're doing 4%. Probably at the end of the year, we can do about 5-6%. Good times for Nigeria.
Well, I find it curious that you chose to focus on the EcoBank story. Well, EcoBank, if it has an interest in Honeywell, it will be remiss on the part of its advisors or managers not to declare that interest immediately, openly, to say that this particular entity is in dispute. Because if you slip on your right in this kind of business transaction, then of course you may have to pay for the consequences later. So EcoBank has done well to say that, well, we have a case in court with Honeywell, and anyone who wants to buy or go into any deal should be aware. But I guess, again, on the part of flour mills, the onus will also be on flour mills to do due diligence, and not to enter into a deal where there may be encumbrances. But that is, their responsibility in the world of business. Now, as for M-Pesa, I see you are, fascinated by M-Pesa. Every time anything comes up around M-Pesa, you quickly bring it. But the question is, we've tried that kind of mobile money transactions in Nigeria, but we've not been able to make as much way with it as the Kenyans have been able to do. What is the problem? Why is that model not working in Nigeria? Is there something wrong with the model that we're using? There are certain exogenous factors that make it very difficult for Nigerians to, enjoy this kind of, if you like, financial freedom or opportunity that is available not just in Kenya, but in other African countries, 2 or 3 more.
Well, I'm going to respond, but we only have a minute left.
Yeah, so we have a bank-led... Okay.
We only have a minute left. So with regards to the mango story, I think that's the only thing we have time for me to take. The issue for Nigeria is fruit flies. Of like 900,000 mangoes produced annually, a whopping 700,000 reportedly are lost to fruit flies. So until there's some kind of capacity building so that our farmers are able to control that problem, we cannot start to think of export. All we're doing with our mangoes so far is just really domestic consumption, and it's really quite unfortunate. That is the bugbear, that fruit flies issue. But I guess, okay, so your point.
You were going to say something about the
okay, yeah, very quickly, we have a bank-led model, and it's not led by telcos, right? So you either have a bank-led mobile money system, or it's telco-led, as you can see with Safaricom in Kenya and Ghana. So until that is turned around, you're not going to see the prevalence of mobile money. If you've seen the payment service bank licenses, they have caveats that don't allow they don't allow the freedoms that you see in other countries. So until that is the regulator, until that turns around, you won't see the same freedoms that you have in Kenya and Ghana and other nations that are telco-led when it comes to financial services.
Well, thank you so much, Rotes, for your time. Moving on now to more business update. Michael Wilson joins us from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. So another mixed day, really. Looking for impetus. Japan mostly on holiday, although the Nikkei is still trading down about 1 3/4%. Hang Seng down as well. China mainland down too. Singapore's economy grew 7.1% according to its latest figures. That's actually quite impressive, higher than an official estimate for 6.5%. And so on. The New Zealand Central Bank raised the official cash rate to 0.75%. but that was not enough to stop the New Zealand dollar slipping. But anyway, a central bank actually taking anti-inflationary measures quite seriously. China electric car startup XPeng, which wants to rival Tesla, is to become a global automaker, apparently. Company wants to enter Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands next year. Its rivals have already expanded. NIO and BYD have already gone into Norway. According to market observers, China is keeping its zero COVID policy going. Now, investors into China don't like this because it just takes one case to shut areas down, and that's affecting its economic growth. However, there are other indicators that China is blocking at the moment, particularly its shipping information. Normally, you can go across to the Automatic Identification Signals Index and take a look at which ships are actually going where. But that's dropped. Those signals have dropped from 15 million a day to 1 million. So not exactly seeing where the supply chains are actually working or not. The worst is over, though, according to the International Chamber of Shipping for Global Supply Chains overall. Retailers apparently have made a lot of significant pre-orders, new shipping capacity, but it's going to be a long time for this, the next 24 to 36 months. But it's also dealing with other lingering issues, not least of which the actual vaccination of seafarers, which isn't happening as fast as people would actually like. So let us recap the United States. The Dow futures up very, very slightly. Retail stocks took a hit yesterday. Nordstrom Gap down. HP shares, though, there's an unloved company, which is actually coming back slightly. Got a 7% lift from earnings that beat expectations. Most tech stocks in the red. Basically, what's happening here is because Treasury yields go up and tend to lift bank stocks and crush tech stocks. Just the way the market actually is working right now. And the renomination of Jay Powell to being the chair of the Fed, it makes him slightly more hawkish than the slightly more hawkish outlook for the United States than perhaps people had actually thought. Google, I told you we'd be talking more about this mandatory vaccines that are going around at the moment. Apparently, Google staff are actually, Google employees are rebelling against it. Several hundred Google employees have signed and circulated a manifesto opposing its widened vaccine, according to internal communications. The global security vice president said all employees working directly or indirectly with federal government contracts will require vaccinations, even those working from home. Samsung, this is a good one. Samsung, the South Korean microchip manufacturer, has chosen Texas in the United States as a base for its new $17 billion chip plant, close to the city of Taylor. If you know Texas, I don't particularly know, but anyway, that's where it is. And it's South Korea's biggest ever US investment. Again, this race to become self-sufficient as far as semiconductors are concerned. Apple is suing an Israeli spyware NSO group. We had mention of this slightly before. The issue is that this group it's Pegasus software, can apparently infect iPhones and Android devices and can extract messages. Apparently, this was about security surveillance. Now, Apple is worried that it's actually spreading to the likes of you and me using our phones, which they don't approve of. This strange goings on in Turkey at the moment. Lira has gone to an insane, as it's described, low after President Erdogan sparks a sell-off. What he's doing is increasing inflation, and he's lowering interest rates. I mean, this is totally against what everybody thinks in the world about how you actually run monetary policy. I suspect that their finance minister has probably not got long for his job right now, because Erdogan will be wanting to blame somebody for all this. Liz. I'm going to take you back to yesterday in the UK and the PMIs which came out. They look quite good on the face of it, but it raises pressure again on the Bank of England to think about interest rate rises. Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, was before a House of Lords committee yesterday, and he was playing with this idea of not offering forward guidance. If you remember, this is something that we inherited from the United States about central banks saying, you know, we may do this, we may not do that. It's just expanding this area of nudges and winks about how central banks actually work. But he was actually talking about maybe reducing that, maybe because, like me, many people actually thought there was going to be an interest rate raise last month, which there wasn't, and the markets were very disappointed about that. Now, London is trying to compete with Wall Street in terms of SPACs, these special purpose acquisition companies, and the first one is actually being floated. It's by a company called Hambro Parks. Hambro being quite a famous name in British banking, as you know. It's looking to raise up to 150 million. It's not a lot of money, but they're looking for fast-growing tech companies. Now, I was talking to oil analysts yesterday, and this is very curious indeed. So it looks like Biden has got his wish and is going to release 50 million barrels from the strategic reserve in the United States. Now, you will hear many people today talk about a combined effort by consuming countries like China, like India, like South Korea, and like the United States. I was talking to oil analysts about this yesterday. I don't think it is concerted. I think that people in these separate countries are separately going their own way to challenge OPEC and say to OPEC, all right, you're in charge of demand. We're in charge of demand. You're in charge of supply. We're going to start to release some of our strategic reserves. Now, normally, what I've said to you in the past about this is, and I still think this is true, you're not legally allowed to do this in these various countries, depending on how they regard what they regard as legal, unless there is a stricture of supply. Now, you could say, apparently now, that because these things, this reasoning gets extended, that the rise in prices is affecting supply, and therefore they're going to do it. But as a concerted effort, no, it's not. Apparently, according to analysts I was talking to yesterday, they're saying that it just so happens that all these countries are acting in the same way, but they are not, repeat, not acting together. Gold, that's been smashed again, once again, as US rate hike expectations start to rise. I mean, that's just the way things actually work at the moment. And also Jay Powell's reconfirmation has hit gold as well, because people are looking at other investments, particularly government bonds, as a result of that. Now, we're looking at Thanksgiving holiday tomorrow in the United States, where they thank the Lord that their pilgrim fathers actually landed on Plymouth Rock safely and all the rest of it, all that stuff, you know. So basically, all those figures that were coming out tomorrow will now come out today. So there's going to be a huge dump of economic data, including weekly jobless claims. And also, we're going to hear the latest on what the Fed actually thinks about which way the economy is going and whether what the progress of their asset purchase schemes is actually going to be. The committee was split about interest rate rises the last time. It's going to be interesting. Of course, we now have a new vice chairperson of the Fed, Lael Brainard. I don't think she will have had much to do with this, although she would have been working obviously as a Fed governor at the time. And we get a revision of the US Q3 GDP figure. So an enormous amount of material coming up to look at the United States. So you'll be no doubt digesting that in your programming throughout the day. And I'll touch on it tomorrow if I think it's important enough to include in the Global Business Report. There it is. That's the global view.
So a quick rebuttal as regards the Joe Biden story out of America releasing 50 million barrels of the strategic national reserves. The Financial Times ran a story saying that plan will backfire as it will hamper greatly the COVID-19 pandemic recovery around the world. So he has set up something that will have a spiraling effect around the world. That's what some analysts are saying on this side. I mean, that's one. And two, I just want to ask you, what is Recep Tayyip Erdogan's end game with this descent button is pressed on the Turkish economy?
I have no idea, and nor has anybody else outside Turkey. That's the truth of it. You can forget it. It's part of it. What he's saying is it's the independent way in which Turkey is going forward. I have to say that the rest of the world is making its own judgment about that, and you've seen it in the fall of the lira. What else do we need to say? He's an autocratic dictator, and he's doing what he wants to do. I think it's absolutely crazy. I'm actually quite looking forward to a Turkish holiday next summer as a result of this. If it goes any further, I mean, it'll be a tremendous place for visitors to go. Turkish hospitality is absolutely renowned. What on earth is going on in their finance ministry? I have absolutely no idea. And I'm in very good company about this, nor has anybody else. As far as the FT story is concerned, well, don't believe everything you read in newspapers. I mean, I'm not knocking the FT because I read it just like you do. But at the same time, I think that what Biden's doing, he's trying to play politics with the oil price. He's trying to get this release. As I said to you, it's not a concerted effort by other consuming countries. They happen to be doing it at the same time. They're all getting fed up with OPEC because OPEC is in charge nominally, OPEC plus, in charge nominally in terms of supply. And there will come a stage where we get this thing called consumer destruction or demand destruction, where prices rise so high that people say, do you know what? I'm not going to go out in the car this weekend. I don't care. I've heard all the arguments about how it gets to the pump and how the wholesale prices have to be bought, months in advance and all this kind of thing. And I get the idea that it has to go through refineries and therefore the price remains fairly sticky. Well, at some stage, consumers are going to rebel against this. What on earth that's got to do with COVID and the rest of it, I do not know.
Well, Michael, I get your point that these countries may not necessarily be working together in terms of their release of oil reserves. India has already pledged 5 million barrels. South Korea, Japan, and China have not made any announcement. But do you think OPEC will be disturbed in any way by this? Because even in spite of this disclosure, oil prices, the spot price of crude oil has been going up. And I would like to know how has the market responded? It looks like the market has not even taken any notice of this. Would this end up as a drop in the ocean, as Goldman Sachs is saying?
I think we have to wait to see what OPEC Plus says about this. No, the market responded very, very slightly. Actually, there was a very, very slight increase in the oil price yesterday. But as I said, I think the most important thing about this is not a concerted effort. According to oil analysts that I was talking to yesterday, it's not a concert. It just so happens that all the countries are doing it at exactly the same time because they are worried about the rise in energy costs. And whilst OPEC Plus agreed to release those 400,000 barrels a day on a monthly basis extra to their supply, remember that the demand is the most important thing here. And the demand is going to be these countries which are saying the price is too high for us politically, industrially, and all the rest of it. So we're going to take action. Now, they can't go on doing this. There will be some kind of stop put to it, but it certainly will be an ongoing pressure on OPEC. Nothing from OPEC so far. As soon as they say something, then we'll know a little bit more about it.
Well, they have a meeting next week. Maybe we'll know something then. As for the president of Turkey, well, who is going to stop him? Inflation is already down to 20%. The lira has lost 45% of its value. Yesterday alone, that it lost up to 15%. Who will stop him? Because he says, it is either my way or the highway.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's not quite like North Korea, which is a hermit country, because we understand that. But the strange thing about Turkey is it's a huge country. It's got massive manufacturing potential and so on. It's being resisted. Its joining of the EU is always resisted by the likes of Germany and France. They cite Turkey's human rights record. I'm sure that's true, but the real reason is that they fear its manufacturing might. If you want to get good fakes, I shouldn't be saying this to you, but this is what people from this country go. If you you want good fakes in everything, from watches, handbags, shoes, and all the rest of it, you go to Turkey. They're very good at doing that. But that's just one aspect of things. They are a very serious manufacturing country, and they have a very, very important strategic position. I need to tell you about this on the eastern edge of the EU. So they are a very, very important country. I look at what's going on there, as most observers do, and think, I have no idea. I don't know how to answer your question. It goes against everything that monetary policy, which seems, it's got its problems and all the rest of it, but it's adopted throughout by central banks throughout the rest of the world. And here we have this strange affair in Turkey. I just do not know. I think the markets will make their own decision about it. I think the next stage, I think the finance minister will go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.
And I'm sure probably Kemal Atatürk will be turning in his grave as regards what is happening in Turkey now. Thank you. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adeso Moro is here with us. Adeso, great to have you.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Tundu. And good morning, Dr. Abati. Great to see you all this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, morning. In the last 24 hours, we've seen countries in some parts of the world report record high COVID-19 cases since the start of the pandemic. This is coming as we count down to the festive period, and just as some countries are opening up for the first time. Let's take a look at the global figures as provided by the Johns Hopkins University this morning. At least 5.1 million deaths have occurred since the pandemic began out of 258 million COVID-19 cases. And the Johns Hopkins University is reporting as at this moment that 7.45 billion doses of coronavirus vaccines have been administered globally. Here in Nigeria, the NCDC says the epicenter, Lagos, is reporting a backlog of 13 coronavirus cases from the 17th and 19th of this month, while 6 other states reported 39 cases, bringing the total for the day to 52 cases. Now, no COVID-19 related deaths were recorded in Nigeria in the last 24 hours. Vaccination continues in Nigeria. In the last 24 hours, 23,822 eligible Nigerians showed up for their first coronavirus jabs in the arms, and another 10,582 people showed up for their second dose across the country, and that's according to the data provided by the NPHCDA. Vaccines remain free and available for those ages 18 and above in the country. It's only in Lagos, in the approved or authorized private labs, that you have to part away with a fee, administrative fee of 6,000 naira to get a jab. Now, you should have some images on your screen. These are images from the Lafenwa market in Abeokuta, Ogun State capital, southwest Nigeria. As part of efforts to inoculate 2 million residents in less than 60 days, the state government has begun the rollout of COVID-19 vaccine in the market. Well, you three have Ogun State in common, yes. So that's the Commissioner for Health, Dr. Tommy Koka, taking the safety message as well as the jabs to the market. It's awareness, and more awareness now that the vaccines are available. Talk about life being easy, shopping and getting vaccinated at the same time. While away from that, it's beginning to look a lot like lockdowns and not Christmas in Europe. This is as the WHO is warning that there could be another 700,000 more deaths from COVID-19 in the region by March. The daily rate has been doubling since late September, prompting governments across the region to introduce new restrictions. However, protests against the measures have turned violent. Now, in the U.S., the government is asking a federal appeals court to let it proceed with a sweeping workplace COVID-19 vaccine rule to avoid what it says is enormous harm to the public. The Biden administration yesterday said delaying the measure, which requires large employers to vaccinate or test weekly, as well as some strict mask rules would lead to thousands of hospitalization and deaths in the country. 2 weeks ago, you recall that a federal appeals court halted the Biden vaccine mandate, highlighting constitutional concerns. A lot of Republican states are backing this halt by the court, and of course, religious institutions as well as some private companies are also with the Republicans on this. And finally, as part of its cautious easing of border restrictions, New Zealand this morning announced that it will remain shut off to foreign visitors for another 5 months. The government announced that fully vaccinated travelers will be allowed to enter only from April. Now, the plan shows that New Zealanders in Australia, neighboring Australia, who are fully vaccinated will be allowed back home without having to quarantine from mid-January. However, New Zealanders living elsewhere can return only in mid-February. Guys.
You want to start? Okay. New Zealand has one of the strictest restrictions in the world, and one of the reasons why at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, we regularly praised Jacinta Ardern, the Prime Minister, as one of those forward-looking leaders in the world who had tried to protect the populations of their countries. Now, New Zealand says by April, it will relax restrictions. But even then, it's not as if it's a total restriction. Persons traveling to New Zealand would need to have, taken the COVID test. And then when you arrive in the country, you will also quarantine for 7 days and also take another test. But, the important thing is how the public health system in New Zealand has been very attentive to this pandemic. Even when by January 16, fully vaccinated New Zealanders will be allowed in, then again, they will also, it's not as if the state is dropping the ball. We've used New Zealand again and again as an example of leadership. But what happened was that after the initial reduction in the rate of infection, it went up again. And the government of the day had no option but to come back. The response minister there says that, in fact, they introduced restrictions and that it will be the last thing that New Zealand will lift. But that's that about that. As for the United States, in the first week of November, President Biden came up with this mandate that any company having more than 100 workers, those workers must be compulsorily vaccinated. If they are not vaccinated, then they must undergo weekly testing. And then, of course, the fine is over $3,000 for one instance. And for the companies, the fine could be as high as $13,000 plus. And that was why, you found Republicans, their attorneys general in the states, businesses, all rushing to the court. Now, the Fifth Circuit Court, a Fifth Circuit federal court, then, of course, ruled against the federal government. And the federal government is now appealing. And because there were so many cases, the court decided to choose the Sixth Circuit Court in Cincinnati as a place of appeal. Well, the lawyers for the government, they're saying this is about the safety of human lives, and that over 7,000 lives could be saved if this mandate is allowed to stand. Let's see how it plays out in the courts, and then we'll see what really happens. Finally, the WHO. Yes, the WHO is warning that Europe has become the latest epicenter of the pandemic. And even the WHO regional director for Europe says that, look, the death rate is going up in an astronomical manner. And you find that despite the efforts of the most of the 53 countries in that continent to deal with the issue, the people have been pushing back because they're saying they don't want further restrictions imposed on them. And that's what explains the riots that we've seen in Austria, that we've seen in Netherlands. What I do not understand is that some of those countries, take for example Netherlands. Netherlands has a vaccination rate of 84.4. On the average, Europe has 67.7%. And yet we have this upsurge, and in some places in a week, over 30,000 infection rates. So what this means is that what may probably be required is a vaccine plus strategy.
Right, that's why I thought I had this article queued up, but I didn't have it queued up. I'm finding myself. So I wanted to share this with you, Ade, so I wanted your thoughts on this. AstraZeneca CEO links Europe's COVID surge to rejection of its vaccine. What he is essentially saying, it's been reported in today's British press, is that the differences in T-cell immunity between the vaccines mean that those of us who receive the Oxford AstraZeneca jab have a longer immune protection than the other ones. Now, do you believe that? Do you think it's just politics? Is he just trying to really rub it in the faces of the EU? People like Macron, you'll recall, who was completely hesitant to have the French elderly over 65s use that AstraZeneca vaccine. Is he just trying to have a little moment here at their expense? Or do you think there's some truth to that? Is that just one factor behind the spike that we're seeing in Europe?
Well, Tundu, you know, with this pandemic, you can never remove politics from it. And you give the man a moment of his fame. What scientists have also said at the back of this is that when AstraZeneca was first rolled out in the UK, you saw the elderly taking AstraZeneca, and when you look at those who have come down with COVID deaths in the parts of Europe, as we're seeing now, there are those who didn't receive the AstraZeneca shot. So perhaps further investigation will be needed. But the fact as they stand does point out to when AstraZeneca was first rolled out and the UK accepted it. It was administered on the older population, while Europe, there was a pushback because, of course, in the initial stages, we saw the reactions to the vaccine reactions to AstraZeneca with people coming down with side effects. So we cannot say for sure if it's one reason or there may be several others. We watch to see, Tundu.
Okay.